Hello, and welcome to another Divorce Discussions. This one, we are going to do something not related to divorce. And sometimes that's good because as women going through this process, we don't just deal with divorce, we deal with a whole bunch of other things in our lives. So I have Maartje van Krieken, who is a specialist, a highly experienced and trained consultant, focusing on helping businesses and leaders to navigate really turmoil, tumultuous conditions in the business environment. So, Maartje, thank you so much for being here.
Hi, Marty. Thanks for having me. I'm really glad I get to hang out with you because we met in New Orleans, and I love your energy and I love talking to you.
Oh, well, thank you. And, it's so funny how you meet people in your life and you think, well, that's really nice that I met them. I'll probably never see them again. And then next thing you know, you see them on everything wherever you go. So let's really focus on this because divorce is really a lot of turmoil in your life. And what you work on is, okay, now what about if there's turmoil also going on in your business, in the market, in the environment that you're working? Can you tell us a little bit about your background and why this is your area of expertise and focus?
Yes, I can. So I worked for 20 years internationally in oil and gas in the most male-dominated part of it, in places like India and Iraq and Russia and Africa, doing frontier projects. I've loved my career because in places like that, there is always work that doesn't fit with the job descriptions that you can pick up. But it took me a while to find out that trying to stick to the corporate swim lanes as laid out, right, the typical career ladders, was not really my forte. And then trying to do it by kind of copying how the guys did it made me even more unhappy. So after a few painful iterations, I realized that I wanted to swim between the lanes or color outside the lanes, maybe, as you will. I think there's always space for that, but it took me a while to realize that you can choose to do that. It comes with its ups and downs, right? And since I found myself a lot happier. But my happy space is making those connections between people who are in their lanes. I think as an outsider or a minority, and then working in so many diverse environments, I connect dots quicker than other people. I hear things and see things differently and quicker. I think I also learned that I'm really people oriented. So when situations are hard, and on frontier projects, they're always hard, I think I have good skills to tap into the energy that's available. And with that, I mean that in these situations, there are sometimes people who are 700% overwhelmed and just struggle with managing themselves in their day-to-day job. And there's other people who might on paper not have the title, but who have energy or are just new to the role, or who are doing so well in their personal life, they have more to give, and who are in the moment able to step up and step in and help push, the situation to the point that others can tag along again, right? Or see the light at the end of the tunnel again.
Yeah. And I think this is so, I love that this is where you focus, because I see so many businesses, especially now since COVID, everything, like whether you had, even if you had a really super stable industry, it kind of went screwy, the whole COVID thing, right? Everybody's dealing with this now. Do you see an increase in and I'm guessing the people that come to you are pretty stressed by the time they realize they need some help.
Yeah, stressed is not always the right word. I think they don't self-identify necessarily as stressed. By the time they agree to let me in, things are dire, right? Because we all think that we can do it ourselves. And we all think that admitting that we need help is a sign of weakness. And if you're a leader, sometimes that is even harder, right? Saying I also don't have all the answers. And I tried with the stuff I did, and it's just not working. In general, the world is turning faster around its axis, right? Not physically, but it is like that. So the World Economic Forum, in its 2023 risk report, actually came up with a new word because they ran out of words to describe the amount of risks and turmoil of stuff that's happening in parallel in the world, right? So we're not crazy, and the interdependencies between everything are bigger and more complex, right?
Right.
And so I think the difference between personal and work in the end is not necessarily that different. You cannot control how things phase out, and sometimes they all phase the wrong way at the
Yeah.
same time, and you just get to a point where, you know, it plugs out and everything comes to a grinding halt, and you're not sure what to plug back in first.
Well, and
And
that's the thing. If you're, I mean, if you're dealing with, it's one thing if you're an entrepreneur running a business, or if you're a leader or a CEO or a project manager dealing with stuff that's going bad at work. But then you add on the stress of maybe, you know, you're having difficulty talking to your team members. Maybe you're having some relationship problems at home. Maybe you're dealing with a divorce. Maybe you're dealing with financial pressure, and everything just keeps building. And the more pressure I'm under, the worse my decision making is, for sure.
yeah, exactly, which is one of the tools that I definitely help organizations with, right? Some hygiene around this decision making is good in any crisis moment, but also makes you more nimble, because we humans are a little flawed in that perspective, right? And if you do it in the corporate world, it doesn't make you any better, because there's so much subjective in there. And we respond to whoever shouts loudest, and we respond to groupthink, and we respond to what we believe is the right thing, or what the world wants from us, or, you know, what our competitors do. And so, yeah, putting in some structure and learning a few basic tools to make your decision making more mechanical, maybe a bit more fact-free, or full based on facts and truths, rather than your initial gut reactions, can be helpful, particularly when it's complex, right?
Right, right.
Yeah.
And I think that is the difference between, you know, when you're making strategic decisions. Because the other side of my business is as an executive and leadership coach. So I'm working with a lot of people that are in, you know, Fortune 500 companies. I'm not doing the same work as you, but a lot of the people are very concerned. Do I listen to what my intuition is telling me? Or do I look at what my team is telling me? Or do I look at the facts? Because sometimes those things aren't aligning. So how do people kind of get a sense for where they need to go with that, and what are some of the big mistakes you see your clients making?
Yeah, I think I always talk about how people seem to either go for apathy or the witch hunt. So they either kind of get stranded in nothingness, or they're trying to find this one golden egg, this one thing that they can do that will fix it. It's like with failure investigations too, or with any kind of after action review. Everybody always tries to find the one culprit and then say, well, look, we found it, so if we fix this, everything will be right. Unfortunately, everything keeps moving, right? And we all know that in reality there's actually very little one right solution. There's many roads that lead to Rome. So the good news is, if you make the wrong decision, if you got good skills, then you can just course correct. If you make the wrong decision because your decision making was so flawed in the first place, you unfortunately have to recycle. So I think people need to realize that there's always dynamic factors and there's always trade-offs. And if you try to walk away from that, so try to make it by only going for the direction or the advice from party A, but ignoring party B and C, chances are it's not going to work, right? So you need to at least hear them out. In quality decision making, people talk about relevant information. Unfortunately, in the current world, we were bombarded with information, so we perpetually have too much, right? So yeah, you need to filter out taking the information that's relevant. And I think two of the good questions to ask yourself if you make a decision is usually choosing between options. And one of the things to check with yourself is, do all these options have the same level of definition? Your current state is also an option, and of course it's the best defined because you know that one, right?
Right.
But often you start to discount an option because it simply looks very risky in your head. But it looks very risky in your head because it's not defined so well. So what's the one thing that you can do, or the piece of information that you need to put more definition around that option, so that you can either put it aside or keep carrying it, right? So information needs to be about putting definition around options. The second question to ask yourself, I think, in making decisions is says who. And so it's not just about all these examples that you give, but it's like what is these people's relevance with regards to the decision, right? Is it the person who has the purse strings and controls the money? Is it a legal or a government person? And so, yes, this is relevant because this is what the legislation says. Is it somebody in an organization who maybe at first sight is not in there because they're quite junior, but in reality, they work in this space. So they might actually have stuff to say. So if they say that that option looks really weird, it might be worth at least listening to them, right?
Yeah.
So it's about, do I get more definition around my options with this information, or where can I find information that will do that, right? Or, give me more quantification for the risk associated with it, or who says what? And I think as soon as you start working in any of these directions, you can't really go wrong, because I truly believe that in decision making, although I preach that people document it and all, right, in the corporate environment, I do think the right decision starts to light up.
Yeah.
As you go through the motions, it really becomes quite visible what's the sensible route to go. And that doesn't mean that the route is completely defined, but it's 80% there. And if you start moving down the road, you can readjust along the way and probably get there.
It's funny when you're saying that. That's exactly what I work with my divorce clients about. How are you making the decisions? What are you basing this on? Who gave you that information? What's their relevance? It's really not that different. Like, it's kind of amazing how not different it is when I hear you speaking, because you're so articulate about it. Let me ask you what about if you are a business owner, you make a decision based on the options you have, you feel you have them well defined, you've assessed a risk to each one, you've made a selection, and then you get going down the road with this decision, and all of a sudden the world changes, or the supply chain breaks, or who knows what happens. When is it time to cut your losses and say we need to go to plan B or C or D? Or how long do people tend to stay on that bad path? If they've made that decision, do they feel like, I made it, I got to stick with it? Or how do they deal with that kind of thing?
Yeah, so it's conflicting, right? Because sometimes I say, don't go too much with your gut in decision making. But ultimately, I do think it's there, right? I think our gut is usually overlaid too much with, but, this person I admire so much always says this, and my competitor is making success. And all these layers are kind of preventing you to really tap in the right part of your guts. So to me, I think that that question doesn't have a right answer, right? Because it depends.
Sure.
But depends is a crappy answer. So I do think that so to me, in the moment, realize how emotional you are, because that's never the right time, right? So can you somehow park the decision long enough to give yourself the space to calm down and not do anything brass, right? So and I don't know, that's different for different people, but can you step away from it for a little bit and find whatever it is that you need to breathe, right? And create that space. And then, I think if you're a solo entrepreneur or a small entrepreneur and you can't tap into a team of people, I think for me, it's take the decision, put it in your head and go to bed with it. And if you wake up at 3 a.m. and go like, no, or you will wake up the normal time the next morning and kind of go, yes. And then if I do that, I can do this and I can do this, right? Because the right decision leads to action. And so it's like when you like, oh, let's toss a coin. And then it's like, oh, let's do best out of 3.
Yes.
That comes from you knowing deep down inside that it doesn't feel right.
Yeah. Yeah. I that coin analogy is funny, because I can't tell you how many times people have said that. I've sat on teams and they've said that, well, let's just toss a coin and go with whatever it does. And then sure enough, it lands and everybody goes, let's do 2 out of 3. So you automatically know what the answer is I love that. Yeah. I'm glad you said that, because it's been a while since I've heard that one. Where else do you see some of the challenges, especially in today's market, today's economy, where things are, switching so rapidly? It seems like if you watch the news, like there's always these major issues now that are coming up in businesses. Where do you see? Do you see there's a pattern? Do you see there's a kind of is this a trend? Is it changing? What's your anticipation of this?
I think it's going to get worse, right? There's going to be more data generated, more information generated. Even if you are on a course that doesn't change so much, it probably feels like it. Um, and so I think that redundancy and communication on what the course is or what the objective is or where you're going is important, because ultimately with everything that gets fired on people and comes at us, right? If you are reminded every day, this is where we're going as a team, and you get a new piece, okay, no, actually, it doesn't have anything to do with it. We can filter that out, but we forget to filter it out if we lose sight of the goal, right? So if we then because every goal is, there's also in a corporate world or in a business, 5 side goals too, right? There's the 5-year goal and the 1-year goal and so if we don't get reminded of the 5-year one often enough, we will start making all our decisions on the 1-year one or the next month's one or even our personal goals, right? So I think it's about redundancy and communication. And an openness and a true willingness to listen, because if you empower people to speak up what they see and actually start using it, you can be much more nimble, right? If I'm willing to listen to somebody on the production side who start telling me, you keep on telling us every day this is the goal, but now I see this development,
Right.
I think they're at odds with each other, right? And if you're not willing to create a culture where that kind of information can trickle up, the chances that you find out in time are just really low. But so it's even more important than ever before that you have openness and willingness to listen, right? And that you have some basic principles of risk management that are visible to everybody.
Right.
And I think as an entrepreneur, you can enlist some of your peers or your partners or your friends, right, to be those extra ears and eyes, and say, hey, this is where I'm going, this is what I'm trying to do, and I know I'm doing it alone, but I'm sharing it with you.
I think that's a great idea. I'm going to backtrack a little bit because you said something really interesting that I'd like to get your opinion on. You said sometimes there is so much new information coming in. What do you say to those leaders who are too focused on making sure they have all the information before they make a decision? Because to me, that's kind of like nowadays, like you said, we're all online, everything is available, it's just right there. When do you know you've got enough information?
I think we all have enough information. Very few of us have enough relevant information, right? So first of all, if you truly believe that your business is dependent on filtering that many news sources and sources of information, then you need to disperse the load, right? So then you need to hire somebody or pay, or there's organizations you can pay who give you management briefs and check every day for X, Y, or Z. So you can either pay somebody or you can distribute it over a team to at least make it manageable and kind of only have like the top stuff brought forward. In the beginning, people also tend to tell you that everything is relevant. So risk management tools actually are helpful in that, because it forces you to periodically say, okay, 3 months ago, we said this was a risk. And now we say it again and we say it again, and it comes up every 3 months, but the needle never moves on this. So is the likelihood of it happening going down, or is there another reason that it keeps sitting so high on the list but nothing changes? Right. So I think actually making that visible creates a bit of a reality check for people like that. You can calm it down, right? Or where the risk management conversation also helps is if you actually have a frank conversation saying, okay, you keep on telling us we need to follow this but if it actually happens, what is then the impact, and how much time do we have to respond? Because often we have way more time to react to it, right? Or chances that we'll miss it when it does happen are very slim, and we can't come up with a response until it happens anyway. So why do we keep on monitoring it that way if we can't do anything until it happens? Right.
So those are really good suggestions. Thank you. So Maartje, you have covered a ton of information, and like I said, it's amazing how business decisions and personal decisions are really rooted in the same basic logic and sequential steps and what you need to have. So what would you say is the most important issue that we have covered here today that you want people to remember? Just like a quick summary statement of what do you think is the most important thing that people need to remember?
It's all too much, right? So bring it down, try to focus on what it is you're trying to decide, what's relevant, and try to shut down some of these channels that are not there, right?
Yeah.
And be just a little wary of the layers that are preventing you from truly tapping into your guts, right?
Yeah.
To truly see the lit up path.
Yeah. Maartje, if people want to find out more about what you do, if they are entrepreneurs and could use your assistance in doing this, in navigating this part of their business, what's the best way to reach you?
Yeah, I'm very active on LinkedIn, so I'll provide the link. You can find me there. I'm on under my first name. It's not the easiest, but there's not tons of Maartjes, so it should be easy. Or you can find me on my website, which is called the Chaos Games Speaker.com. So you can also Google that, and there's contact details and stuff on there.
And I will make sure all of that stuff gets in the YouTube show notes so that people can just click on it and get a hold of you. Maartje, thank you so much. I know that divorce is not what you came here to talk about, but it's funny how many parallels there are. And you are obviously such an expert in helping people navigate that turmoil. So thank you so much. I know that any entrepreneur that's listening in has really appreciated this. And I've learned a bunch too. So thank you, Maartje.
Thank you so much. It was an absolute pleasure to be here with you.